Welcome back to the Explainer, everyone. Today we're jumping straight into a pure Moto2 race digest for the 2026 Dutch Grand Prix. We are talking race flow, intense track battles, and the final results from one of the most legendary venues on the entire calendar, the TT Circuit Assen. You know it, you love it, the Cathedral of Speed. Assen demands absolute perfection on a good day. But this year, the cathedral didn't just test their speed, it literally turned into a crucible, testing pure human endurance. Just to wrap your head around the absolute chaos of this weekend, you have to look at the peak track temperature, 50 degrees Celsius. That is scorching. And that kind of brutal heat completely changes the grip levels out there. It turned this super high-speed Assen layout into an outright survival test. Remember Friday Cactus? It was wild. The heat caused a wave of really violent, chaotic crashes all over the grid. We even saw red flags. Guys were struggling just to keep the bikes upright, let alone dial in a perfect setup for Sunday. Okay, let's dive into this and see how the weekend actually escalated. So Friday was all about sheer survival, like we just talked about. But by Saturday, the top guys really started to figure out where the absolute limits were. David Alonso, riding for CF Moto Azul Marino Aspar, goes out and lays down just a blistering lap to snatch pole position. A 1:35.236. Incredible. Then we roll into Sunday's 22-lap race, and man, the tension was thick. The early laps were frantic, just a complete scramble. But by mid-race, the true contenders stepped up, and a very distinct breakaway pack formed at the front, leaving everyone else in the dust. And what a breakaway it was! We got treated to this fierce, relentless, three-way dogfight for the win. You had the pole sitter David Alonso, desperately trying to dictate the pace from the front. But breathing right down his neck? The two Liqui-Moly Dynavolt Intact GP riders, Manuel Gonzalez and Senna Agius. These three were pushing their Calyx machines way past the edge. It was a total tire-shredding battle, swapping paint, probing for any tiny weakness, corner after corner. Just a masterclass in high-speed, high-stakes Moto2 racing, with absolutely no one willing to give an inch of tarmac. Crash.net actually hit the nail on the head when they described it. They wrote, "The Dutch Moto2 race went to the wire, with a tight fight to the checkered flag going all the way to the final chicane." Just imagine the adrenaline pumping through these guys' veins. After 22 physically draining laps baking in that Dutch sun, the entire weekend comes down to a matter of meters. It was all about who was going to navigate that iconic final section at Assen with the absolute most bravery. Let's move to and see how this builds step by step, because the tactical precision here is just brilliant. First, you have that insanely high-speed approach into the legendary Geert-Timmer chicane. They're carrying maximum speed right up to the heavy braking zone. Then, Alonso makes a genius tactical move. He aggressively defends the inside line. Since this chicane is a rapid right-left flick, if you hold the inside there, you completely dictate the drive to the finish line. He basically slams the door shut on any late braking maneuver, forcing Gonzalez to take the long way around. Finally, they flick the bikes upright, and it's just a pure flat-out drag race to the checkered flag. And the result? A mind-blowing margin of victory of 0.024 seconds? No way. David Alonso manages to hold off Manuel Gonzalez by literally the thinnest of margins to grab his first win of the season. It's just an unbelievable testament to Alonso's mental fortitude and his defensive riding under massive pressure. That right there is true Moto2 resilience. Racing simply does not get closer than a finish line sprint decided by thousandths of a second. Now, while that battle for the podium was spectacular, we definitely need to talk about the immense grit we saw in the midfield, especially from the Japanese riders, who had a super tough weekend. Tayo Furusato, for example, showed real promise on Saturday. He put in a strong P12 in qualifying, but he just couldn't hang on to that pace in the race, slipping down to P18 and missing out on the points. And then there's Ayumu Sasaki. His weekend started like an absolute nightmare, with 3 brutal crashes on Friday. Starting all the way back in P22, Sasaki spent his whole Sunday mentally recovering and rebuilding his trust in that Calyx machine. To fight his way up and finish P19 after all that, yeah, it wasn't a points finish, but the mental victory of conquering those demons was massive. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Look at these top 10 results. We already talked about that fraction of a second gap for the win. But right behind them, Senna Agius takes third, crossing the line only 0.234 seconds off the winner. The entire podium finished within a quarter of a second. That is insane. Further down, you've got Izan Guevara bringing the Boscosquero home in fourth, and the rest of the top 10 is just incredibly tightly packed. It really highlights how unforgiving this Moto2 field is right now. One tiny mistake out there, and you easily drop 5 positions. So the crucial point is how this dramatic Assen result shakes up the big picture. Looking at the provisional championship standings after round 10, Manuel Gonzalez is still holding a very commanding lead with 185.5 points. He's nearly 60 points clear of Guevara in second, but David Alonso's massive win bumps him up to 116 points. And sure, the mathematical gap is still pretty huge, but Alonso proving he can conquer arguably the toughest track under extreme pressure, that sends a massive psychological warning shot right across Gonzalez's bow and to the rest of the paddock. The momentum is definitely shifting. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question. Next up, the paddock packs up and heads to the German GP at the Sachsenring. Now that track is a completely different beast. It's tight, it's compact, and it is famous for those endless, grueling left-hand corners that absolutely destroy the left side of the tires. So what's going to happen? Will Gonzalez's measured, consistent style help him protect that massive lead? Or did David Alonso's breathtaking win at the Cathedral of Speed just unlock a new level of confidence that's going to let him turn the tide in Germany? The second half of the 2026 season has officially ignited, folks. Keep your eyes on the grid, and we'll see you right back here for the next explainer.